Hello, everybody, and welcome to a very special video here on the channel featuring competitive, in-person, limited, at a high-stakes Magic the Gathering tournament. Footage from these is incredibly rare because not only do you have to be doing really well in the tournament to be eligible for a feature match, but you then have to be selected from the people that are doing well. And so this is my first ever feature match, and I'm very excited to break it down for you and talk about what's going through my mind in a very crucial match in my tournament. I have a picture of my deck list for you here. This is from a sealed event, and so I am playing a black-green deck that is splashing white for Prison Sentence. I'll go over the deck very briefly and its game plan. Basically, the theme of my deck is these prototype creatures. I have 2 Goring Warplows, 2 Boulder Branch Golems, and 2 Rust Goliaths, and these give me some great early to mid game plays, while also a ton of inevitability late game, because if I draw them in those late stages of the game, I'm going to be able to overwhelm my opponent's creatures. I have, in terms of strong rares, the Cityscape Leveler, as you can see at the top end of my curve. It is a fantastic 8-drop that pretty much wins you the game if it gets cast and goes unanswered. And then I have a couple of more mid-tier rares in the form of Thran Spider, which is a great 3-drop that can help me search for my other artifacts, as well as Ashnod Flesh Mechanist, which gives me some late game inevitability as well, and Gixian Puppeteer, which is not an insane card in my deck, but is still just a very strong card on its own. I round that out with some other creatures. Sarenth Steelseeker in particular is quite a good one. Now, in the non-creature slot in my deck, you might notice a glaring lack of removal, as the only interactive spells I have are Shoot Down, which can destroy artifacts, enchantments, or creatures with flying, and Prison Sentence, a card that I specifically splashed white to play because my pool was so lacking in removal. It was actually a massive weakness of my deck that I could not remove things once they were in play, because I simply didn't open those cards in my sealed pool, and I had to make accommodations for that when I was building my deck, and really kind of force this Prison Sentence in using a brush land to help fix my mana, as well as playing 18 lands. Now, this is the deck list, and I have a decent knowledge of my opponent's deck as well, because as you will see while I'm playing, I write down all of the cards that I see from my opponent to help me with sideboarding and strategizing. But let's dive into the match. I don't remember exactly who went first, but I think that I might have won the die roll. And I believe I keep my opening hand and my opponent takes a mulligan. Now, one thing to note is in a sealed event, when both players are undefeated, as we were, you can kind of expect that your opponent is going to have some pretty strong cards, particularly of higher rarities, which is why I was a little bit nervous going into these matches, because I knew I couldn't kill my opponent's creatures if they played some higher rarity things. And I believe I show off my opening hand there for a brief second. I didn't really want to accidentally show my cards to my opponent, but we'll see if I can manage to pause it perfectly. And in my opening hand, you can see that I have the Prison Sentence, I believe. On the far right side of my hand, I have a Gaia's Gift, the Combat Trick, and then I have a couple of other artifacts. It's a little bit hard to see, but I have a reasonable opening hand, and I'd never been in a feature match area. I'm definitely really excited for this. Now, I'm going to be writing down a lot of the cards my opponent plays, and so I'm not going to tell you too much about their deck list, other than the fact that, as you can see at the top of the screen, they are playing an Esper control list. It lists me as Abzan, but I'm really just a green and black deck. Now, you may notice that I'm shuffling my cards back and forth in my hand, and this is something that you really want to be doing if you're trying to optimize at the highest level of in-person competitive play, because it disguises like which cards you're actually drawing for the turn, which just avoids giving your opponent information. So you'll notice I draw my card, I shuffle my hand a little bit, and then I make my play for the turn. And yeah, so as you can see, I'm like leaning over, and that's me writing down the cards that I'm seeing from my opponent. So pretty much I'm writing down that they're playing plains and an island, because those are going to be like the main colors. They just actually played a rare, which is Razor Lash something or other. It's a 2-mana 3/1 that if it can come back from the graveyard if it does end up dying, with an extra +1/+1 counter on it for non-basic lands your opponent's control. I have a brush land in my deck that I'm probably going to end up playing at some point. I don't want to have to deal with the 3/1 over and over, especially if it's coming back as a 4/2, so I use my Prison Sentence on it. Now, this is actually a pretty big decision for me, but I didn't want to start taking 3 damage per turn, and I wanted to make sure that it wasn't going to keep coming back over and over again, as well as giving myself some scry in the early turns is quite nice. Now, another thing that you should note is I only have Prison Sentence as my way to kill things, and so this ends up being like a relatively big decision for me because I don't want to use my removal spell early, but this felt like a threat that I kind of was going to have to deal with eventually. Now, my opponent played Scatter Ray there. Definitely a card that I'm excited to write down so that I know about it for games 2 and 3, because that's something I could potentially play around. My opponent has played 3 colors of mana, and they play a Phyrexian Rager, or not Phyrexian Rager, a Scrapwork Rager, which is a 4 mana card. It's a nice little value card, and it's a card that is it's not a huge creature, but it does get a little bit of card draw going. So I tried to play a Stone Retrieval unit, by the way. It's a 4 mana 2/3 that makes a tap Power Stone, and that's the spell that they countered with their Scatter Ray. Now, on my next turn, I play a Thran Spider. We both get a Power Stone token. My deck actually uses these Power Stones very well because I have a lot of artifact creatures, and I also have a few activated abilities. One thing you'll notice is that I did miss my land drop. When I played my Prison Sentence, I believe that I kept 2 non-lands on the top. I think I kept Cityscape Leveler as one of the cards, and I kept one other card, I think, as well with that Scry. I'm not exactly sure, but I know that I had the option to try and scry away one of them, but I wanted to keep both of them. So I thought they were both good enough to be worth it. And I think one of them was the Leveler, but I'm not 100% sure on the exact detail there. So I'm trying to make sure I hit my land drops here. I play a 5 mana, and I play, I believe, a Rust Goliath prototype. That is a very nice card in my deck. 3/5 reach creature, can block a lot of things. My opponent played another Scrapwork Rager, so they're just drawing through their deck. They're keeping a full hand while also developing their board. They've got a good amount of mana, especially because of that Power Stone that I gave them with my own Thran Spider, but I'm still feeling pretty good about the place I'm in this game. I have a couple of good creatures. The Thran Spider is going to give me some card advantage, and overall, I feel like I'm in a decent spot here. I wish that it was, I remembered exactly what I had scried with the Prison Sentence, because now that I'm thinking about it, I'm not sure it was a Cityscape Leveler, but I know that it was 2 cards that I really wanted, and that I did have the option to try and scry to find lands, and I didn't think it was going to matter. The game seemed like it was going to go a while, so I kept 2 spells. So I have a hand packed with spells, but my opponent has been, every spell they've played has been replacing itself, and so they're also in a pretty decent spot. Now, they have 3 colors. They have islands, they have a swamp, and they have plains. And so I know my opponent is playing 3 colors. You'll notice that they also shuffle their cards. You want to be very precise when you are making your plays. I sometimes forget to shuffle my cards, but it's something that I should be doing every time. And I play a card there that is blocked by the Rust Goliath on the field. But it is a 3-drop. It is Gix's Caress, right? So I'm going to look at my opponent's hand and get a little bit of a sense of what they're up to. And actually, I do remember that I did keep the Cityscape Leveler, and that's what that I did keep the Cityscape Leveler with the Scry, which is an 8-drop, but I felt like I was going to get there because the game was going to go long. My opponent plays Overwhelming Remorse in response, so that's a card that's good for me to be aware of as well, because I do have Cityscape Leveler, and my opponent killing my guy instead of a Cityscape Leveler with their Exiles effect is pretty okay for me. Now here I see Lauren's Escape. I see Weakstone's Subjugation, and I see a Ambush Paratrooper. And here I'm considering the fact that Lauren's Escape is actually not as good against my deck because I don't have a ton of interactive spells. But because I don't have a lot of interaction, it is going to be able to probably answer if I do go for my last interactive spell. The Ambush Paratrooper, I have a 2/4 reach creature that can block it, and Weakstone Subjugation answers my Cityscape Leveler very effectively. So I end up taking the Weakstone Subjugation, and that's another card that I write down on my list of cards because it's another card that is good to be aware of, and I'm slowly gaining some Power Stone tokens to help ramp me towards that Cityscape Leveler or activating the Thran Spider. Currently, I'm sitting at 4 mana, still only 4 lands, but I do have these 2 Power Stones which can tap for my expensive artifacts, and my opponent only has 2 spells in hand that I saw. They draw a card, play a land, and so I still know the exact cards they have in their hand, and they make an attack. I know that they have the Ambush Paratrooper, so I don't mind blocking. They'll simply flash it in and give their team +1/+1. At this point, I'm feeling pretty confident in the state of the game. I have a very good late-game inevitability card in the form of the Cityscape Leveler, and my opponent has relatively small creatures that I have a decent blocker for, and I just have lots of spells and a decent amount of mana. So I untap. I'm in a decent spot here. If my opponent's Scrapwork Ragers do die, they are going to start drawing some cards. Here, though, I just end up playing another like a 4 mana 3/3, I think, probably. Oh no, I play Scrapwork Rager of my own. Perfect. I draw a card, hoping to try to start hitting land so I can play this Cityscape Leveler. And yeah, overall, I'm still in a good spot. I do find a land, I play it, and yeah, I'm slowly building up my mana and my resources. I will start to be able to activate that Thran Spider as well. My opponent, though, still in decent shape. They've got their Scrapwork Ragers, which if they die are good. They've got their Ambush Paratrooper, which can still pump the team, enable some decent attacking. And overall, the game is developing decently for me. I feel like I'm in good shape, but at the same time, I haven't seen any overwhelmingly powerful cards, which I'm fairly certain are in my opponent's deck, and I know that I don't have answers for. So here, I don't really want to like just trade off my creatures. One thing that I could have considered doing is double blocking that Scrapwork Rager with my Rager and my Thran Spider. And that would have given me some nice tools. But I end up going for a Gaia's Might on defense here because I do want to prevent my opponent from double pumping in the future and being able to attack past my guy. So making my guy into a 3/5 while also using my mana is really nice. One thing I was considering as well was keeping the Gaia's Might to try and protect my Cityscape Leveler. But generally, I'm going to have to tap out to play that. And also, it felt like it was reasonable to make my guy a 3/5 so that I wouldn't have to worry about any of their potential like shenanigans that they could pull by double pumping and overall just making things difficult. Having a 3/5 reach creature really just prevents their future attacks and is going to give me a big little bit of stabilization. Here though, I get up to my 8th mana and I jam the Cityscape Leveler. I already know that they've used an Overwhelming Remorse. I know they've used a Weakstone Subjugation, and so at this point I feel confident slamming my strong Mythic Rare, and I'm feeling really good about where this game is at because I know that they've already used 2 answers for it, and I don't know how many answers they even have in their deck. I also get to take out their Ambush Paratrooper, or at the very least get rid of their Lauren's Escape from their hand, which I'm pretty happy about. And I also think that we might have missed a trigger here of them getting a Power Stone token, because I think that even though it didn't end up getting destroyed, they still might be eligible for a tapped Power Stone. So that might have been something that we missed in the moment. Definitely something that I'm not 100% sure on the rules on that, but I'm pretty sure that that's how it works. And so apologies to my opponent for missing that. There was a judge sitting right there, right to the left of my opponent, that and they didn't notice it either. So here they play the Mightstone and the Weakstone, which is a rare. And so the more rares I start to see, the more I'm like, okay, I can still win. I can still beat this card. But they play the Mightstone and the Weakstone here. And then they tap 4 and they have another Weakstone Subjugation, which is quite bad for me because it gets rid of my Cityscape Leveler, which was the card I was relying on to kind of end this game. They used the Mightstone and the Weakstone to draw 2 cards. They probably drew into that. And so not getting an attack off, not being able to deal 8 damage to them does end up proving quite relevant. I mean, it's always nice to be able to deal 8 damage and destroy one of your opponent's permanents. And also, they were fairly empty-handed when I cast the Cityscape Leveler. I knew they had the Lauren's card in their hand as one of their cards. But they do get a little bit of card draw going from the Mightstone and Weakstone, and so the game isn't in the best of shape for me there. Here, I decide to activate the Thran Spider, I believe. And I leave up black and green because those are my main colors. Oh no, I just play a Boulder Fist Golem, the 7-drop. It's always a little bit of a whether I should activate the Spider or not, but when you're going to play a 7-drop, it's generally a good decision. And so, yeah. And then I just pass the turn back. I'm still feeling like I'm in okay shape. I've got a 6/5 in play. I've got my 2/2 Scrapwork Rager, but they are slowly building up their mana to double activate the Paratrooper. They've got some decent cards, and this is really where the game gets a little bit dicier for me because they now have some decent resources. I'm a little bit light on cards in hand at the moment. I can refill relatively easily with the Thran Spider, but they're bringing back their Scrapwork Rager, and I'm just kind of hoping for the best because, again, if they play a creature, I'm not going to be able to deal with it, especially now that my Cityscape Leveler is gone. That is one of my 3 ways of killing things. I've already used the Prison Sentence, I've already used the Cityscape Leveler, and it's effectively locked down. And here my opponent plays a Goring Warplow, a 5/4 Death Touch that can answer my Boulder Branch Golem, and I'm actually okay with that card. That card doesn't do much. But again, I don't have any interaction left other than the green card that can exile artifacts, enchantments, or flyers, and I don't have that right now because otherwise I would have used it on their Weakstone Subjugation to try and give my Cityscape Leveler another shot. So I play another land, tap another bunch of mana. I believe this might be the turn to activate the Thran Spider, but maybe not. Maybe I'm just casting nothing. Yeah, I am using the Thran Spider. I was very consistent at hitting creatures because my deck just has a lot of artifacts. And I think I might have found my own Goring Warplow even. Nope, just another Boulder Branch Golem. I don't remember the exact cards that I hit every single turn. But I also do forget to write down some of my opponent's cards here. But I have a general, like, pretty good list of the cards that they end up playing over the course of the first game. And yeah, I can say that here at this point, I'm feeling like I'm in decent shape, because if this holding pattern continues, I'll kind of alternate between activating the Thran Spider to hit a big artifact, playing the big artifact. Eventually, I'll maybe play my second Rust Goliath, my 10/10 Reach Trample, and that'll be pretty good for me. So again, I'm still like a little bit worried because the only rare I've seen is the Might Stone or the Weak Stone. And at this point, if you're 5-0, you've got some big stuff. And this is where things really spiral out of control. The Steel Seraph comes into play. And this is a card that is a huge problem for my deck. I only have really two answers for this card. It is a flyer. It's got prototype. It's a 5/3, I believe, when it's cast unprototyped. And it can give other creatures flying, vigilance, or lifelink. I think my opponent, they might show the card in the like preview cam or whatever, the thing that's been popping up in the middle. But it's basically a massive flyer. Here it is. Yeah, it's a 5/4 flyer for 6 mana, and it can give creatures flying, vigilance, or lifelink, which is really bad for me because I not only have to deal with it this game, but I know that my deck does not have many answers to this. Even if I use Prison Sentence on it, it's still going to be a huge problem for me over the course of a game. And here I actually have a I'm in a really tough spot against the Steel Seraph because I don't have any more. I don't really have answers to it. I have one card in my deck that can answer it, and it's giving them a flying threat every turn by turning that Goring Warplow into a flyer, and it itself has flying. And I actually don't have a reach creature right now, other than the Thran Spider, which is a 3/5 and cannot deal with the Steel Seraph. I decide to make an attack, try to maybe trade off some creatures, or at least race them so that they have to use the Steel Seraph to give life. Sorry. So they have to use the Steel Seraph to give lifelink instead of flying. And I make my attack, try to threaten the trading of my cards. I play a Brushland just so I have a little bit of extra mana. And then I tap my mana to cast another Boulder Branch Golem to gain some life. So my hope is that if they end up chump blocking enough, I can maybe start pressuring them. I also play a my rare, the 4/3. It doesn't currently have anything to get back, which was a weakness of my deck as well in terms of that card, where I had some small creatures, but not many. And so when it died, there often wasn't a creature in my graveyard to bring back. But the draw 2, drain 2 effect was, when you draw your second card, drain 2 was sometimes decent for me as well. I didn't have a ton of card draw either, like directly. So yeah, you can return another creature with mana value 3 or less. I currently don't have any in my graveyard, I don't think. But the draw second card can be nice. And also it's another attacker. So I basically just added 10 power to the board because I added a 6/5 and a 4/3, both of which have attacks here. But it's not particularly great for me still. My opponent has a 1/4 lifelinker that they deployed, the Yoshin Medic, and they still have that Steel Seraph, which if I don't find an answer to it, if they hit me for even just 5 damage a turn lifelink, it's going to be pretty rough for me. But instead they hit me for 10, and I just take all of the damage. I'm not going to chump with my Thran Spider just yet, and that ends up being pretty reasonable for me because I draw a card that seems kind of unassuming, but that actually gives me a lot of flexibility that you'll see in a second. And it ends up being or maybe I had it already, but I end up, I think, activating the Thran Spider immediately. And I have a pretty good card to find here, the Tower Worker, which is a card that many people forget has reach. And you'll notice I tap all of my white mana because I don't have any more white spells to find. But I believe I show him the Tower Worker, which you might not be able to see, but I'm about to play it. And so you'll see. But it's a 1/3 reach creature, which gives me a double block onto the Steel Overseer card, essentially. And that means that I'll be able to answer that card a little bit, or at the very least, chump it as I race. It's a very close game here, but because I don't have the answer to his rare. And I'm just thinking about what I want to deploy here. I also, I think I'm also considering my attacks here. And the reason I made the activated the card before attacks is because I wanted to inform my attacking decision as much as possible by knowing what I'd have access to, and I felt like that was worth the cost. They still have to play around quite a bit of stuff, and like whether to attack with the Puppeteer or what I'm going to need to hold back as well. I do know that my opponent has access to 5 mana here, and I realize now that attacking with the Scrapwork Rager was pretty bad because they can just block with the Medic on it. They end up not doing that, but if they had decided to block with the medic on the Scrapbook Rager, that could have been okay for me. So I am making a lethal attack, though, so they are going to have to block in some capacity. And they end up blocking and then activating their ambush paratrooper. I kill their Yoshin medic. My Scrapbook Rager dies, which is reasonable, because then I'll be able to get a card back on the following turn if I do make a big attack. They gain a couple of life points. And the thing I was really worried about was them activating the ambush paratrooper. So I was kind of hoping to kill that because it does shut down my double block with this 1-3. But I still feel like I'm actually in a winnable board state because I have so much power that can attack them on the following turn. I am going to have to chump with the tower worker. I was worried I was going to have to chump with the spider. But because they can activate the ambush paratrooper, I am going to have to chump here. And then they end up playing a second Steel Overseer. And Steel Seraph, which is just the extra big flyer that they need. They all of a sudden are very difficult to beat, and I'm actually sitting here thinking like, oh no, I'm in deep, deep trouble. Not only do I have to answer and try to win this game, which is seeming less likely now, but I just don't have a good answer in my entire deck here, and it's going to end kind of badly for me. I end up chump blocking that guy, but they gain 5 life because they gave lifelink and flying, and so they gain quite a bit of life there. And they didn't decide to activate their ambush paratrooper on offense to deal an extra point of damage. Probably reasonable because it will now block a little bit better. I draw my card and I just decide to, I think, attack with everything before throwing in the towel, so to speak. Because they're at 15. I do have quite a bit of power in play, but I don't really have as much in the way of... So I bring back my Scrapbook Rager. And so I get to trigger the... card to gain 2, which is actually pretty reasonable because this way if I do kill their paratrooper, I only have to be able to chump block one of their flyers. And then I think I send in the Goon Squad. I've got them down to 13. Really hoping to force some blocks out here. And if my Gixian guy dies, I can bring back my power plant thing. And I do draw my removal spell for Flyer, so I managed to take out his Steel Overseer card. So his not Steel Overseer, his Steel Seraph card. So I managed to take that card out. And so now I have a pretty clear attack. He's only got 1 creature in play. And I believe if I attack all here and he has nothing, Wait, did I not attack all? Did I have lethal and I just botched it? So I attack with everything. I have 6, 12, 8, 12, 14, 18 points of damage coming at him. And he can block 6 of them. Oh no, I really boffed it. I think I could have attacked all in one. Oh no. Watching myself punt on camera is really brutal. Oh no. Because I had the Thran Spider that I could have attacked with, and I think I put him to 1 here. I think I was thinking that I needed to save that Spider to block with, but that is crazy stuff. I did not do the math there well enough. I think I still had them at like 15 in my head, and I'm actually I would have lost anyway because they had the overwhelming remorse. But I should have attacked everything there because that would have been pretty decent for me. Okay, so going into sideboarding, I lost that game. They had the second overwhelming remorse, and that's another card that I hate to see because I now know they have 2 overwhelming remorses, 2 weak stone subjugation, and those cards can all answer my cards pretty effectively. But my especially my Cityscape Leveler. This is just the people doing official commentary. We're going to fast forward to the next game. So before I get into game 2, I want to briefly talk about what I was thinking about during sideboarding. And basically the card that was most on my mind was Steel Seraph. I don't have any great answers to it in my deck, especially to 2 copies. I don't really have the tools to rush my opponent down super aggressively, because even though I have a bunch of early game creatures, all of them have 1 power. I have a couple of the prototype card that can be a 1/1 Death Touch. I have an Ashnod, which is a 1/1 Death Touch. I have the 1/2 guy for 2 mana, but pretty much all of my creatures are small, so I'm not going to be able to kill my opponent quickly, and they are going to be able to deploy their Steel Seraphs. With that being said, I need to find a way to get rid of those Seraphs, or I'm going to be losing these games if they go long. And so I actually make a very unconventional sideboard choice, and I side in the Stone Brain. which is a card that is normally horrifically unplayable in Limited, but actually has some applications here because you're able to get rid of some cards that you know your opponent has. And so I can name Steel Seraph, make sure my opponent never draws it, and give myself a much better chance of winning these long games by just jamming some prototype creatures, even though they do have some great answers to my Cityscape Leveler. And so that's really what I'm thinking about during sideboarding, and I end up doing that as a result. Another card that I bring in is, I forget the name of the spider exactly, but I do play it this game, I think. It's the 4-mana 2/3 flyer, 4-mana 2/3 spider that has reach and death touch, because if they're going to be giving their creatures flying with their angels, their seraphs, I want to be able to answer those. And so I felt like the spider was going to be useful. And if the spider dies, you can even put a card from their deck onto the bottom. And I can do that with some of their unearthed cards, their Scrapwork Rager. So that card has a nice matchup. I cited it in whenever I felt like there was going to be problematic flyers. And so we're going into this second game. I'm going to be on the play, but again, I feel very disadvantaged because if my opponent plays a Steel Seraph, I don't have any great answers. I have a Cityscape Leveler, I have a card that can kill flyers and artifacts, and then that's pretty much it. And so starting this next game, I'm a little bit worried. I start things off, though, in a very strong way with a turn 1 Ashnod. Going to be able to get some chip damage in, and I do want to kind of end the game a little bit faster if I can. So being able to do that is a pretty nice thing for me. He has to read the Ashnod. I flick it across the table very casually, and it lands perfectly, which is absolutely epic, as I am known to do with my perfect hand-eye coordination skills. It was pretty funny playing in the feature match area, I will say, because there's this massive gap between my playmat and my opponent's playmat. So seeing his cards was actually kind of tricky. I chip in for damage, and I pass back the turn. Here, I know a lot of his cards, and I know that he has like a counterspell in his deck. And so that's something that I am thinking about for sure. He has Recruitment Officer, and this is a card that I am relatively happy to trade my Ashnod for, because I know that he has access to that card in the late game, and I can't really kill it. I can't really invest one of my rule spells to kill it. Here, I look at my opponent's hand. I think I wish that the Ashnod wasn't here for a moment. I don't believe I wrote it all down because I think it was mostly lands. Yeah, I only had 2 real choices here. He had he had a Scrapwork Rager, I believe. Let's just rewind because he does show his hand for a second. And so yeah, I look at his hand. Oh my gosh, they really made this difficult for me tactically to show this off. Really a little bit tough because he put his hand right in the middle, which makes sense because you kind of have to. But that's also where they're showing all of the cards and really showing what Ashnod does. Okay, perfect. I got that out. So basically, he had a Ambush Paratrooper, which is the 2-mana card, and then he also had a Scrapwork Rager, and I was going to try and get rid of the Scrapwork Rager because I didn't want him drawing more cards, and I believe I had a Reach creature in my hand, so the Paratrooper was not a huge deal for me. And I saw that he was very flooded in terms of the number of lands he had, which is definitely something to be worth noting as well. He thought that I was even exiling the card, but I wasn't. I was just putting it into the graveyard. So, yeah. Normally I would write down his cards, but there wasn't really a lot to memorize here. He had mostly lands, and I'm looking at my hand. I think we might be able to see my cards. I have the Gloom Widow Spider, or whatever it's called, in my hand. If you can look to the left, I believe I also have like a Rust Goliath, maybe. I have a couple prototype. I have at least one prototype creature in my hand, and yeah, it's a little bit hard to see. But yeah, I end up taking the Scrapwork Rager there. And I'm down a game here, so it is very high stakes here. This is at this point in the tournament, I had won 1 round that had gone to 3 games, and my other ones I was winning like 2-0 relatively consistently. And getting the Power Stone token here is pretty nice. It is also worth noting that at this point, I was kind of I wasn't exactly sure on my opponent's mana. I wasn't even exactly sure on my mana. I think I might have thinking I was lacking double green or something. I ended up making the block because I know that he's got a lot of lands. He's going to be able to activate his card, and I don't have any creatures in my graveyard to activate Ashnod. So here I'm just ramping. I did think I saw the Thran Spider, but I wasn't 100% certain. One of the other cool things about playing in the feature match area is there are Power Stone tokens and all sorts of tokens everywhere. So you really just get to play all the cards that you want. And he flashes in his guy. I had the Thran Spider that can block it for the foreseeable future, which is the other reason I wanted to play that. And if he brings back the Rager, it's just like a 4-mana cantrip, so it's not the hugest of deals for me. Which he does. He just gets a little bit of value, gets his card back, gets some card draw going. And as you can see, I missed a land drop, but I have these Power Stones that are going to help me out as well. I draw a land, I play it, I attack, because I want to punish him before he draws his spells, especially his Steel Seraphs. And then I just play a 5-mana 3/5 reach creature. I pay a life because of my pain land, but still, the pain land being letting me cast my spells is pretty huge there. And I just chip in for some damage, play my 3/5. The 3/5 reach trample was a great card over the course of this tournament. I even got it for the 10-mana version a couple times. He uses an Overwhelming Remorse. I know he has a second copy of that somewhere, and he chips in for damage as well. So I've gotten one of his answers to my Cityscape Leveler out of his hand, essentially. And then he plays the rare that I used my Prison Sentence on the last game. It's the 3/1. It can't block, though. And then here, I believe I have another big creature to play. Maybe a big prototype creature, like the 7-mana 6/5 or something. But no, I just passed the turn so I can activate the Thran Spider. Having the Thran Spider activation is pretty nice. You got to make hay while the sun's shining. And I think I was trying to find my Cityscape Leveler. But he's going to activate the Prison Sentence here. And I cast my Gaia's Might in response to give my card indestructible and hexproof so that he doesn't get a Scry 2 out of it. And I see that he now has a Prison Sentence as well. A card I didn't see in game 1, but it's yet another answer to my Cityscape Leveler. So he has 5 answers that can stop it from being able to attack. And I believe my opponent is trying to figure out if they are going to get the Scry 2. This is the Razorlash Transmogrant. This is the card that I put my Prison Sentence on in the first game because I didn't want them to be able to... Oh yeah, it doesn't come with a counter if I have a non-basic land, but I didn't want to have to deal with a 4/2 over and over and over in the late game, and this is why I Prison Sentenced it. But yeah, I knew I had a non-basic land thing of some capacity, but it's 4 or more non-basics, so it's not a huge factor. But yeah, Razorlash Transmogrant. So yeah, it was going to come back as a 4/2 over and over, and that's pretty good against my deck if I don't have a Rust Goliath specifically out, and so I didn't want to have to deal with that in the first game. That's why I Prison Sentenced it. Okay, I play my guy that can help me find my lands. That card was actually super powerful for me. And then I play a Urza's Tower Worker. And I think I have to decide whether or not to keep that card on top. And I don't. It's a Blanchwood Prowler, another card that was impressive at helping me find lands over the course of the tournament. And I just decided I don't really want to draw that because I'd rather just start digging for my big spells. My opponent draws, plays a land, passes back. They don't really have any big plays here. And this is a game that, again, I feel like I'm in decent shape here, and I just jam my Cityscape Leveler and hope that they don't have an answer. I know that they have 2 counterspells in their deck. I know that they have several answers in the form of Weakstone Subjugations and another Overwhelming Remorse in their deck, but from game 1, because I know they have 2 copies of Remorse, 2 copies of Weakstone Subjugation, but I've also seen their hand, and I know that they don't have really anything going at the moment, and so I'm just fairly happy getting my cards in order and playing my Cityscape Leveler as quickly as possible and hoping that they don't draw an answer, which is pretty much my whole strategy here. They play a Koilos Rock, which is a card that's definitely good to be aware of in this format because you don't want to suicide your creatures into it, but generally it's relatively easy to know if your opponent might have it. So they attack for 3. I don't have a blocker. I take 3. I go to 15. I think my opponent realizes that they're going to get hit for 8 the following turn, and so they want to do a little bit of racing, potentially. They play a actually very interesting card here. They play a Phyrexian Fleshgorger, which is a 7-mana 7/6. The way they play it with like Menace, Life, and Lifelink. And this is actually a problem for me because if this card is able to stay in play, I'm probably going to lose. And I want to target it with my Cityscape Leveler, but I know that they have Lauren's Protection in my deck, or Lauren's Escape in their deck, which is the 1-mana card that can get rid of give something hexproof and indestructible. And so this entire time I'm thinking, okay, if I attack and they do that, because it has ward, so I'd have to pay a bunch of life. And so then I might just lose the game on the spot. But I decide that I have to attack, have to target it, and that's my best bet, because if they don't have the Lauren's Ambush, then I'm going to be winning the game. And if they do have the Lauren's Ambush, I'm probably not going to win anyway. So yeah, here's the Phyrexian Fleshgorger. It's got Menace and Lifelink, so I'm not going to be able to race it if I don't attack and target it, and I just have to hope that they don't have it. And so I end up going down to 8 life when I do target it, but I do get it off the board. I get a big attack in. I put them down to 5, and I still have a bunch of blockers back, and I don't think they're going to be able to kill me unless they top deck a answer to my Cityscape Leveler, and they do not do that, and so they scoop it up. And so basically I rode Cityscape Leveler to victory there, and I pretty much had to get a little bit fortunate that they didn't find an answer to it. And that's sometimes what you got to do in these situations. Even though I know what's in his deck, I know he's got so many answers to it, I still have to do a lot of stuff there. And you'll notice this is kind of my shuffling pattern. I do a little bit of pile shuffling. I do a little bit of other stuff. And then start the game off. They fast forward it for us, which is pretty nice. But game 3, I'm on the draw. I believe my opponent took a mulligan. But here I get off to a reasonable start here. So I play my card. They play theirs and pass. And then the early turns of the game are pretty reasonable, but then I noticed that my opponent misses their third land drop, and this is just really the time to strike. This is when you can really punish your opponent. I know that they have Scatter Ray in their deck, but I also know that I just have to go as quickly as possible. They Scatter Ray my Tower Worker, which I don't really mind. I was going to jam a Rust Goliath the following turn, but it's not the end of the world, and he just misses his land drop again. And so this is really the time when you have to punish your opponent. I know his deck is really powerful, and so I'm just playing as much power as I can to the board every single turn. So I play my Prototype Boulderback Goliath as a 3/3, just a hill, not a hill, I just play it as a hill giant, essentially, which is hopefully going to be good enough to pressure my opponent down here. He draws his card, doesn't do anything again. He doesn't have the lands. I play my land. I now have all my colors. And I play a Rust Goliath. Get another 3-powered creature into play. Hit him down to 17. He draws his card, and he scoops it up. Probably not a premature scoop, honestly. I still have quite a bit of cards in my hand. If he had killed my guy, I was showing him that I have like the reanimation spell that can bring it back as a full creature. I have the Gloom Willow Haven, and I get the win. The announcers go wild. It is very interesting. I would link to the original broadcast, but the original broadcast has no sound. So, unfortunately, it doesn't end up being something that's that entertaining to watch, because it's just this, but without my insightful commentary on what was going through my head. So basically, very fun experience playing the feature match. It advanced me to 6-0 in the tournament. I'm going to have a full video coming out about this tournament very soon on my channel, so stay tuned for that. But I wanted to break down the feature match in depth, and this felt like a cool video to be able to make. I've never had a feature match before, and even though the sound wasn't working on the broadcast at the time, I didn't know that, and so it was still just a like crazy experience knowing that I'm being commentated on and that I'm just playing my match. And so very, very interesting. My opponent did get a little bit unfortunate in that third game, not hitting their third land, but when you have a matchup discrepancy the way my deck did with his, I have to sometimes take the way I can get it. I didn't get to use the Stone Brain against him, but it was still a lot of fun. And I hope you enjoyed kind of watching and kind of seeing the sorts of things that go into a high-level match and the kind of like how you have to approach these sorts of things. I do know about my opponent's deck. I wrote down as much stuff as I do. I know they had the Razor Lash guy. I know they had Scatter Ray. I know that they had the 2 of the Ragers. I know they had 2 Overwhelming Remorses, 2 Weakstone Subjugation, the Ambush Paratrooper, a Loren's Escape, the Mightstone and Weakstone, Yoshin Medic, and 2 Steel Seraphs. They have the Koilos Rock. They have the Phyrexian Flesh Gorger. So if you keep track of, if you were counting there, I'll just count them up real quick. I have 1, 2, 3. I know they had an Evolving Wilds too. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. So I knew 17 cards of the cards that they had in their deck when we were going into game 3, which means there's only 6 unknowns, which means that I have a huge advantage just because I've been writing down all of the cards that they have, and it leaves me in a spot where I know what I'm supposed to use my answers for. I know what I'm supposed to be like playing around, and I know like generally, okay, they probably could have this, they could have this. If they hold up mana, it's like, okay, they could have Koilos Rock, or they could have an Overwhelming Remorse, or whatever. So I can really inform my decisions, and so that's why I like to write down my opponent's cards. And also when you write things down, it's good to keep track of life totals with pencil and paper. You'll notice both me and my opponent do that, and it's very a valuable thing to do. My deck got the win. It was a pretty close match, especially the first game where I got my opponent down to 1 life. I definitely made a mistake there, though. I hadn't actually noticed that, but if I'd attacked with everything there, I could have at least threatened to kill him. So that's something I should have done, even though he had the Overwhelming Remorse, so it wouldn't have mattered. But still, a good thing to keep in mind. But yeah, that is going to do it for this video. If you made it all the way to the end, leave hashtag feature victory. Actually, no, don't leave that hashtag, because that'll spoil it if somebody goes to the comments section early. But leave hashtag caught on camera, because it's pretty cool to be, or hashtag live gameplay, because it's really cool to get live gameplay like this on camera. And I'm really happy that I was able to have a feature match and break it down for all of you. Anyway, If you did enjoy it, hit that thumbs up button. Let me know in the comment section down below. This is a super unique type of video for me to be able to make, and I'm really happy I got the opportunity to do it. Subscribe for more draft content here on the channel, and that will do it for this one. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll talk to you next time.